Alright, welcome back everyone. In this video, I just want to talk a little bit about what happens with relative time in indirect statement. So we looked at this before with participles, and if you remember, we illustrated it. Our perfect participles occur before the time of the verb. Our present participles occur at the same time, and our future occur at a later time or after the time of the main verb. So we're also going to see that this relativity idea that we were talking about is also the same for infinitives as well in indirect statement. This when exactly the dependent statement time takes place is an important factor for how to translate and understand these types of statements. So we're going to just take a look at one basic sentence and just permute it into the different ways of understanding it with our different main verb tenses of present tense, perfect, and future, as well as our three different types of infinitives: present, perfect, and future infinitive. So let's take a look at this. I've also given our little arrows, I've also put our little arrows just to signify exactly when these things are happening. So just to remind, the past is over here, the present is in the middle, and the future is over here. So that'll stand for all of our different arrows. So we'll just work on this first one. Is pretty simple, but we'll just take it slow. So the student, he says, so this is our present indicative active, so it's present tense. So the placement on our chart here will be in the middle because it's happening at the present time. And he says that the teacher loves the pigs. So in this particular situation, it is ambiguous whether the pigs love the teacher or the teacher loves the pigs. But we'll see that when we do have a participle that makes it clear that the magister is the subject. But that's for the future one. But here we'll just see that our infinitive is present. So if you think back to how present things or present infinitives or participles occur relatively to our main verb, our present infinitive is occurring at the same time. So I'm just going to do this sort of line right here to show the progressive aspect, but it's happening. So whenever this student said this, the student says that the teacher loves his pigs. Whenever he made that statement, it means that at that particular point in time, the teacher loved his pigs. So let's go on to the next one to see how this might change when we use a perfect infinitive. So our perfect infinitive then is laudawisa, to praise. Oh, I actually did make a mistake. That should be praise. I think I said love, but praised his pigs. So in this situation, we still have a present tense main verb, but we have our perfect infinitive. So the student says that the teacher loved his pigs. So I'll just illustrate our present tense verb right here in the middle, signifying that it took place in the present time. But the laudawisa here, instead of saying that the magister loved his pigs at the same time the student said this, it actually implies that this was something that took place in the past. So the perfect infinitive occurs at a time before the main verb. So this is how we should understand the sequence of events taking place. So the student says this at some time right here, but what he's actually reporting is that the teacher loved his pigs at some earlier point relative to our current situation. All right, and then we'll also take a look at this future infinitive as well. So the student says that the teacher will love his pigs. So remember that we know that this is modifying magister because it's accusative singular masculine, It's not plural, which would mean that the pigs loved the teacher. Sorry, I lowered my chair accidentally. So let's go ahead and write where our decit happened. So this is in the present tense. But what this future infinitive is implying is that the teacher will love his pigs at some point in the future. So not necessarily at any specific point, but at some point in the future, the teacher will love his pigs. So that is our relative relationship there with the present tense main verb. And we'll see that this idea maintains stays similar throughout all of our different main verb tenses. So I use the present tense verb, so we'll take a look at these perfect and future tense main verbs as well. So it's the exact same sentence, but it's the teacher said, or the student said, so we know that our main verb is dixit, so it's perfect tense, which means it took place in the past. The student said that the teacher loves his pigs. So now, even though this is taking place in the past, we also know that since it's a present infinitive, the teacher was loving his pigs at the same time that the student said this. It doesn't, just because it's present doesn't mean that the present infinitive still took place in present time, but this is not correct. It's right here. It took place at the same time as the student said this. So let's also take a look at this perfect example here. So we know that the student said this in the past, same as before, but since it's a perfect infinitive, it has relative tense to our main verb. So here, our teacher loved the pigs at a time before the student said this. So the student said this at some point in the past, but the teacher loved his pigs even earlier in the past, so even further before. So we're still maintaining the same relationship in the present tense as we had with the present tense main verb. It's still something that happened before, but now our main verb is also something in the past, so it's also something earlier than that. It's sort of like how we talked about the pluperfect tense. The pluperfect always has to occur relative to some earlier event. So it's the same idea of relativity. And we'll also see that this holds true for our future infinitive as well. So the student said that the teacher will love his pigs. So in this instance then, the will loving is happening at some point in the future relative to when he said this. So the student said it in the past, but he said that at some point in the future, the teacher will love his pigs. So it's not in the present, it's not in the past when he will love his pigs. At some point beyond that we don't know, but we know that it's at some point later. So that's our future tense there. Okay. And finally, for our last example, we can also have future tense main verbs, but they also express the exact same relationship. So the student will say, so we'll move our little main verb dot here, that the teacher loves his pigs. So we have the exact same relationship as up here. It's happening at the same time, but the student actually hasn't said this yet. This is the main difference between these things, is that the main verb expresses the future tense, so it's something that hasn't actually happened yet, but it will happen. So remember, this is our present, this is our current perspective, and this is sometime in the future. But what this is saying is that whenever the student will say this, so he's going to say it sometime, definitely. So whenever he says this, at that point, the teacher will love his pigs. So that's the relationship here. All right, we'll also look at it for the perfect infinitive as well. So our future verb is also coming over here, but with our perfect infinitive, what this is implying is that the magister has already loved his pigs at some point. So, but the student hasn't said it yet. So the student will say, so at some point in the future, the student will say that the teacher loved his pigs. So, and then here is our relationship here at some point in the past relative to this future statement. And then let's go ahead and look at this final example as well. The future is still happening here, so we're still a perfect tense main verb. It's happening at some point in the future, but when you use the future infinitive, the action of the praising has to happen even further off in the future. So the teacher will praise his pigs even further in the future than the student will say this. So the student will say this at some point, and then even further after this, the teacher will love his pigs. So, so really the big takeaway from this this explanation is that our relativity of tense, so when things happen in relation to when the main verb happens, stays consistent for both participles and for infinitives. Oh, looks like my program crashed. Okay. All right, back into it. My program crashed for a second there, so let me get my drawing back up. All right. So participles and for infinitives. All right. So relatively in time, we have the same relationship. If it is a present infinitive, it happens at the same time. If it's a perfect infinitive, it happens at a time before, no matter when our main verb happens. And if it's a future infinitive, then it happens at some point after, no matter when our main verb happens. So, thank you, and hopefully this was helpful.